The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening. Welcome to the ADI and JC training webinar. The topic for the webinar this evening is safeguarding, what it is, why it's important to us as ADIs, and how to deal with safeguarding situations. This webinar is being recorded and it will be available on the ADI and JC website in the next few days. We want participation in the webinar with both questions and feedback. There should be a box on your control panel, which is probably on the right of your screen, marked questions. Any questions or feedback, if you type into that box, and we'll deal with them as we go along. Explaining all about safeguarding this evening are Lynn Barry, ADI and JC Chairman, and Lynn Weston, ADI and JC Governing Committee Member, both of which are also members of the ADI and JC training team. So I'm now going to pass over to Lynn.
Thanks, James. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar. Just want to start off with an announcement of some news that came in from the DVSA today. Just to say that if you didn't already see our news flash, from the 3rd of April this year, you will be able to book your standard checks online. So you'll be sent a letter which will have an invitation to go online to actually book your standard check, which we think is really good news. We've been asking this a long time now. NAS certainly working on it for a long time. I know one of mine was once on a Saturday when I don't work Saturdays. It was at 8:45 in the morning, and that was quite an early start to find a pupil on a Saturday. So I wouldn't have that issue anymore because I'd be able to go online and pick a time and a location that was suitable for me when I'd got a suitable pupil. So I actually think that's going to be really, really helpful. So that's from April the 3rd. So just to come back to safeguarding now, I'll just start by saying that this is not a new topic. Safeguarding is not new. It has always been around. And actually, in 2011, the NJC held an association meeting where we had a lady called Louise Instone who came along and talked to us then about safeguarding for ADIs. So we've been looking at this topic since 2011. It is not new, but it is very much in the media and the news at the moment, and really quite topical again. And it is obviously also very important. So this is about safeguarding for ADIs and PDIs as well. It's about safeguarding for our business and our reputation, and it's about safeguarding the people who we have as our customers and clients. Safeguarding is basically about and keeping things safe, because sometimes if we can spot things early and perhaps help somebody early, then actually, or if it's perhaps in the way that we say something or do something as an ADI, we might actually stop a slightly more critical situation from occurring in the first place. This is all about, are we teachers? Do we consider ourselves as teachers? Because we do teach, we coach in the car, but we're not the same as teachers in school. There are loopholes which mean that we don't have to come under the same policies. And interestingly, something else I saw today was that another group of people who actually have loopholes are home tutors. So if you have somebody at home that needs extra maths or music or anything like that, those people do not actually have to be DBS checked. They might be if they work for a company, or if your maths person that comes along happens to be a teacher, but they don't have to be checked. So there is still a loophole there. And I think there's loopholes around ADIs as well, because I consider teachers, but we're not thought of in the same respect and in the same way as in a school. So although schools would have policies, probably we don't, but we do. So already we have a code of practice, and I would suggest to anybody listening in that if they haven't already, they read the code of practice. It's on both our website and the NAS website, and that you have a look at it and that you sign up to it, because in a way then you have already started safeguarding yourself by reading that code and signing to it, and showing people that you have as clients that you do agree to that code of practice. And also, of course, we have DBS checks, formerly known as CRB, but again, that's a way of us being safeguarded and safeguarding the people who come to us. So safeguarding's not new. It's something that has been going on for a long time. DVSA as such don't have what I would consider is a safeguarding policy, but they certainly would investigate anything that was sent along to them to look at. The fraud and integrity team are now called the Counter Fraud and Investigations team, and they would look at anything that is sent in by anybody who has concerns about safeguarding issues. So can we go to the first slide, James? Lynn, did you want to go over that one?
Yeah, that's fine. Hi, good evening. Safeguarding. It's anybody who comes into contact with children and has a responsibility for self-guarding. Now, the definition of a child is anyone that is under the age of 18. And as most of our clientele are 17, this falls into this group. We tend to think of the people that we're tutoring as being adults, and I would think that most of us treat them as adults. But we have to remember that actually they are under 18, so they do fall in this group, so it's quite important. Also, we can teach people that have special learning needs, have disabilities, and this could come into a group called SEND, which is students with special educational needs and disabilities. Now, these can be particularly vulnerable, and it's something that we do have to watch out for and be very aware of. We can also teach vulnerable adults, as sometimes an adult could be vulnerable as well, and we have to be very mindful of teaching an adult that has special needs. So if you'd like to move on to the next one, James. Do you want me to do this one, Lynn? I think you're going to do this one.
Yeah, I'll come back to this one. So what is safeguarding then? So it's just a term that's used to indicate how we're going to protect the health and the well-being and human rights of all individuals, which allow them the right to live free from being neglected, from being abused, or from being harmed. And there are key documents which have come into place here over time, which perhaps some of you, this first one, 2004, cast your mind back and see if you can remember a child called Victoria Climbié. Now, Victoria Climbié, and I know I certainly heard the name, was sadly only 8 years old when she died. And she was tortured and murdered by her so-called guardians, and she died in 2000. Now, during the time that she was being abused, she had contact, or people that had contact with her were the following: the police, social services were seeing her, there were 4 local authorities dealing with her, the National Health Service had seen her, NSPCC, and some local churches were also starting to be concerned about her. Now, they'd all noticed that there was abuse, but when sadly she died and there was a public inquiry, the judge said that there was just absolute blinding incompetence for those people to get together and for everybody to deal with it in a satisfactory way. So a lot of criticism was raised, and actually from her case came this statement of every child matters and the initiative of that. So a lot of what we do with safeguarding now actually comes from that Victoria Climbié case. And Children's Act of 2004, you could say, came about after that case, and it gave a database on children. It set up a children's commissioner, and remember, children refers to anybody, as Lynn has said, under 18 years of age. So sadly, that little girl actually had quite a lot to do with what the moves were after that towards safeguarding. And then things have been brought up to date, more working together to safeguard children, 2015, and keeping children safe in education, 2016. We are in quite an honoured situation when we are with pupils or clients in the car, because sometimes they will open up to us, they will tell us things, and we might just be that lifeline that they actually need. And I'm sure those people listening have perhaps had incidences where somebody has said something to them which has made them think, and it might have been something where you needed to do something about it. So basically that's just a background to what is safeguarding and really where it's all come from. Should we have the next slide, James?
Before you do, we have had a question. I don't know whether you want to deal with it now or whether it'll come up on one of the slides naturally. Would it be advisable to ask a family member to come on a lesson if it's a special educational needs or disabled student?
Sorry, can you say that again? I missed the beginning.
Would it be advisable then to ask a family member to come on a lesson with a special educational needs or disabled student?
I wouldn't see anything wrong in that. You wouldn't necessarily have to, but it might be a very good idea. Lynn's shaking her head, saying yes over there as well. It might be a very good idea.
I think especially for the first few lessons, until that vulnerable person gets used to us and we get used to them, it could be a good way of them introducing the person to us and for them to feel comfortable with us.
Yes, I mean, even if it was a situation with a medical condition, something as simple as perhaps being the client being diabetic and needing, to have special care of some sort in the car, then if you've got somebody in there as well, then I would have said that would be a good idea, yes.
So it's not automatic, but it's something maybe to offer as available if they want.
Maybe a very good idea, yes.
On the next slide.
Yeah.
Make it work.
Okay, so there's 4 categories of abuse. The first one being physical. I think that's fairly obvious to most of us. Physical can be someone that's maybe possibly being bullied. They might open up to us and tell us about being bullied. It might be something that we might notice that they're very reactive to us. If we move, they might jump away from us. They might feel, and you might get a feeling that, oh, this isn't right. It might be someone that's coming in and regularly having bruising on their arms or hands, or they're covering themselves up, so you know something's happening there. Harassment or physical abuse. So physical one tends to be the fairly straightforward one. Emotional abuse, this can be domestic abuse. It can be someone that's very controlling of a person, and you might notice that they're very frightened of getting back late on a lesson. They're very guarded in what they say to you, maybe. So emotional abuse is someone that's being very controlled. Sexual abuse is anyone that they might open up to you and tell you that they've been abused. They might tell you that something's happened to them, they've been attacked, and you might be the person they open up to. It also falls into the category that we don't like to discuss too much, but it's grooming. And this is something that comes up with ADIs. It could be grooming, it could be they're being stalked. A lot of youngsters get stalked nowadays. So they might come to you about that. So sexual abuse can be a lot of different things. Neglect is one that also can come up. Neglect is where someone is perhaps in a family there that may be a bit poorer. They may not be getting enough food. You're going to notice they're very tired and withdrawn. It could be they're coming in with extremely dirty clothes. they're not having their clothes washed. Anything that's going to be where that you feel that they're not getting the care that they need, really. And just listening to them, letting them tell you. We're in a position where they will open up to us. So we do need to listen to them. Quite often you'll find with these categories also is that they link together. One may be physical and emotional abuse. One we spoke about was that a youngster may be seeing physical abuse at home. So they're not actually being physically abused, but they may be seeing it. So this is a form of emotional abuse, but they're two linked together. So sometimes they can link together, and we've got to be very aware of this.
Is it true to say that sometimes they might try and hide this from other people in the outside world, and at other times they might actually want somebody to listen and want to show what's happening? So, for example, you mentioned somebody that might be self-harming. That person might actually, you know, roll their sleeves up when they touch the steering wheel, and you might be able to see that they've been self-harming. They might actually be crying out for help, in actual fact.
Yeah, I think with self-harming, you'll find a good trigger for this one is that it may be a nice, really hot day, and we're sitting there with our nice t-shirt on, and they will come out with a big sweatshirt on and keep it pulled down over their hands. So something like that is going to be an indication, what, you know, that they're really hot, they're hot in the face, but they won't take off their jumper. So that's going to be a little bit of an alert to you. Then yes, you might notice that when they move the steering wheel, there may be marks. But you need to let them open up to you. You need to give them the opportunity to talk to you. You don't want to address that. You want to let them open up to you.
Definitely.
I have got some more. To the next slide. I've got some more questions if you want to address them. Same person asked the question about special educational needs came back with the feedback that I've taught a hard of hearing student, and their mum or interpreter came along until the student was comfortable and we had a good communication line.
Yeah.
That's confirming what you said. This is a question. Who are we supposed to report these things to? How sure do we need to be before reporting? After all, this is an intrusion of privacy as well. We could open a can of worms or have misread the situation. A similar question, as an ADI, would we need to be careful we are not dragged into a situation that could escalate?
Definitely.
Yeah, and that's what Lynn, I mean, we're coming on to where we go for help towards the end of our slides, but what Lynn said earlier, it's not for us necessarily to start asking questions and saying that we're noticing things. It's for us to notice these things and to help if we're asked to help, or if the person starts to open up to us. I don't think it's for us to go in there and start inquiring of people if they need help. I think that will come if they have that sort of relationship with you, that they will start to talk to you. What do you think, Lynn?
Yeah, I think because we build up a rapport with pupils over a long period of time, it's not something you want to address straight away and jump in. We've got to let that rapport build up and then let them come to you. They will come to you. If they want that help, they will probably drop hints to start with. Rather than tell you outright. There'll be little signs, little hints if they want to speak to you. And just let them speak to you. Don't push it. If they want to talk to you, they will. We're going to deal with the other issues later. We're going to go through who you need to report things to. But no, definitely, we don't want to be jumping in. It's not, that isn't our job. We're definitely not the people who deal with it.
No, our job is also not to give advice. I think sometimes people jump in and say, well, I'd do such and such. It's not for us to give advice. It's for us to notice and then know what to do with what we've noticed if we feel we need to.
So, fine.
Joe, just coming back to that. James, just coming back to that other question you had about, I think you said an ADI spoken about someone that was deaf.
Yes.
Yes. Just going back for a bit of examiner type feedback here. As an examiner, when a deaf person or anybody that has a learning disability presents for test, especially deaf actually, we're given, an examiner is given a double period to deal with anything like this. And what you would do is you would spend, as an examiner, as well as an ADI, as an examiner, you would spend time with this person discussing how you would communicate. So very much like an ADI, we would discuss how we're going to communicate with someone. Then you would go out and test. So you're going to have a long period of time to discuss with them how you would like to communicate. So the same as we would do as an ADI, really. Have someone along there, give them some advice.
Okay.
Just going back, clarifying what you said, even if we've got very strong evidence or suspicions that something's happening, we don't report it then until they ask for help. Is that right?
You may need to. You may need, if you really think it's life-threatening, then we may need to be taking it further. But you do need, we would never be the person that would take action. We would take it to somebody else. We would take it to a safeguarding manager. We wouldn't be the ones that would take action. We would pass the information on to the safeguarding officer and let them deal with the situation.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. We'll come on to where you can go to for help and 24-hour hotlines and all this sort of thing in a moment. Okay, Lynn, do you want to do that next slide?
So, as ADIs, we're in a position of trust that possibly puts us in a potential risk. There's an omission, as Lynn's already discussed, in legislation currently that leaves ADIs outside the walls of teachers. So we are standing on our own a little bit here. We do have to look after ourselves to a certain extent. One way of doing this is to read the Code of Conduct, as Lynn said, sign up to the Code of Conduct. But yes, we as ADIs have to make ourselves aware of the safeguarding rules so we understand them and we understand how it affects us. In schools, there will be a designated member of staff that's responsible for safeguarding, and the school policy is normally usually on the website. But we don't have that, so it's up to us to understand safeguarding, understand where we go to, how we would report it. Hence why we're doing this website, this webinar tonight. I believe that in the future, not quite yet, but we are working on it at the moment. We're going to put some forms together and they will be available on our website. They're not there at the moment, but they will be shortly. Okay, James.
That's correct.
I've got another question sent in. Does that mean that driving schools that have franchisees need to have a safeguarding officer or expert?
Well, this is where we fall outside the sort of legislation of what to do. I don't feel at the moment that they would have to have that, but I do think there'd be somebody there that an ADI might go and say, look, this is happening, what am I going to do with this? And then if they can't work out some sort of solution, it depends how awkward or difficult the case is. If they can't work out some sort of solution, then the solution is to pass it to the next person and to go to the local authority with it. Or the NSPCC, because they have a brilliant website and they have a number that we'll give out at the end for anybody to ring if they need help. But I am not sure at the moment that they need to have a policy. They might want to have a policy. And on the NSPCC website, there are suggestions for how you can make policies and what you might need to put in something like that. I think it's more about somebody with people working for them making their ADIs aware of safeguarding and what to do if there are any issues, and maybe first of all to take it to the person that's in charge of the driving school, then between them, they would need to take that further because they wouldn't be able to deal with it themselves. Safeguarding is about passing it on to the appropriate places that can deal with it. Because if we sit with it for too long and don't do anything with it, somebody actually could be in danger while that's happening.
So,
anything else you want to say, Lynn?
I would say that perhaps if it's a larger driving school, that maybe, like ourselves, we're a big organisation and we've got now, I think there's 3 of us that have actually done the safeguarding course now. So if a larger driving school, perhaps someone in that larger driving school should be looking at doing the safeguarding course.
Yeah.
If not, if people haven't got anyone to contact, they can come to us because we have got people on our committee that have done this course now. And we do know how to pass this information on now, which hopefully will be on our website shortly.
Okay, thank you. James?
I've got another question coming. They're coming in thick and fast at the moment. The DVSA gives all ADIs a code of practice. Will this not cover us?
Well, the DVSA don't give us a code of practice. The DVSA and NASP together, and remember NASP are made up of the 3 major national associations, including the NJC. We made this code of practice up together. So first of all, the ADIs have got to read it, and then they've got to have signed it. Now, I don't know the exact numbers at the moment, but I do know that not every ADI is signed up to it, and I'm sure there are some that aren't even aware of it. I don't think that code of practice completely covers absolutely everything because it will constantly need updating. I mean, it has been updated quite recently, actually, by NASP. But that would be an ongoing process. So it's definitely the starting point, yes, but it may not cover, I want to be honest, it may not cover absolutely everything that they come up against. It depends how you interpret that code as well, because that's the next thing that we're going to be coming on to.
Well, isn't the code of practice how we behave, not how we deal with other people, our students, our clients who might have a problem?
Exactly, it's how we behave and how we interpret that. If we do follow the code of practice, then we should ourselves stay safe. But it doesn't mean that we're not going to come up against other safeguarding issues along the way. Lynn, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you've covered that really. I think that's fine. I see the code of practice as us rather than the pupils.
Yes.
It's us saying what we would like to, what we're going to do. Safeguarding is really looking at when we come across pupils that have got problems and may have safeguarding issues that we need to look at, rather than, as you say, the code of conduct is more covering us.
Can we have the next slide, James? Lynn, do you want to go through those and then we can join in?
Yeah, so as an ADI, we need to consider the following examples. I'm sure that most ADIs have come across at least one of these at some point. As we spoke about before, pupils tend to build up quite a good rapport with us, and they will sort of pass bits of information on at times, and they might just be very innocent ones that you can think, okay, and take that on board. But it might be just them dropping us a hint. So if people tell us that they're being bullied or abused, we've got to listen to things like this because they might be trying to get some help from us. A pupil may be able to, you may be able to see a pupil that's self-harming. So we've spoken about this. We've spoken about how they might cover up, but you may notice when they're steering. As we've said before, that's not for us to probe, that's for them to tell us, but we do need to be aware of it. Which I think is all of these safeguarding measures, is that the main thing is that we're aware and we're taking on board and thinking about these things, not just ignoring them. A pupil may say they've been a victim of a physical or sexual attack. What I was just thinking about with this one was that we hear of, I know pupils that they're not allowed to drink before they're 18, but we do know it happens, and they getting their drinks spiked, and they don't want to tell their parents they've been drinking, but they may be getting their drink spiked if they are drinking. So that's one that may come up, and they might say that to you, but they might not say that to their parents. A pupil might be vulnerable to internet abuse, stalking or grooming. We know what these social websites are happening now. They're on social websites a lot, and these things happen, and they might mention it to you. So again, it's something to listen to and be aware of, but be very aware of them. Be mindful of what they're saying to you. Are they actually worried about it, or aren't they worried about it? Looking at their demeanour, how they're acting with you, has their attitude changed? When they're talking to you, were they a big bubbly person, very friendly and bubbly, and now suddenly they're a little bit withdrawn, a bit more quiet? So they might be indications of something that's happening in the background. James, for you, anything there, Lynn?
Can I just add there that sometimes they may just want somebody to listen to them? You know, from experience and as a past teacher in a secondary school, sometimes you don't need to do any more than perhaps just listen, because something may almost blow up in their mind that if you listen to them and then, you know, you see them a few days later, or they might tell you that actually, yes, they think they've sorted it. Some things which seem huge to them at the beginning, actually, they can sort out. It's when something goes on for longer and starts to have a lot more of an effect on them. So that's why I think somebody said at the beginning about jumping in and opening a can of worms, and we've said we're not there to really give advice. We can listen, but not just to plow in with, well, I do this or I do that, or you need to do such and such. That's not what it's about. But sometimes just listening can be the starting point and can be really helpful to somebody, because then at least they've started that sharing process.
And I also think that if we just listen and we don't give advice, we just listen, they might be then willing to discuss it with someone else. If they realise that they can talk to someone and it's not going to have repercussions, then they might take it to someone else. So yeah, it might be a way of opening it up for them to talk to other people and feel comfortable talking to other people.
Yes, and that's something that we can do. We could give other places that they could go to if they needed help. You know, if they've got specific things that they need to talk about, they might want to have other places that they could go to. So when we're saying we don't give advice, we can certainly give other places that they may want to go, or other people that perhaps they could talk to. But again, it might not always be sensible to go straight off and talk to their parents and think, right, I need to go and tell their parents about this, because it could be, from experience, somebody whose parents are actually the issue. And it might be that by, you know, going straight away to parents, because we tend as ADIs to have contact with parents, if somebody opens up about something to you, that may not be the best course of action. It's much better to tell, you know, somebody that is further away from it, in actual fact.
Does that mean that if we're told that by a client that they're being abused, all we do is listen unless they actually say they want help? We don't pass it on unless they say they want it passed on?
No, I didn't say that. It depends entirely what we're being told. I mean, if somebody told me they were being abused, then I would deal with that differently. And I think the next slide deals with that. And I think that would definitely need reporting. Sometimes that there are some people who might tell you things as well that turn out not to be true, you know, but again, that's not for us to judge that one way or the other at that point in time. But each case is different, and what may seem huge to one client may not actually be that big, was what I was saying at the beginning. So just listening might help them. But no, if somebody was telling me they were being abused, then I think they're crying out for help and they need somebody to talk to, and you would have to get more involved. Shall we have the next slide? Have we been through those? Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is how, if we understand basic safeguarding, and it is a complex subject, if we understand it, we can actually have a very positive role. Because if somebody comes and is being abused, we might be that lifeline to helping them. We could, if we passed it on to the correct places, allow it then to be dealt with. It's then out of our hands to a certain extent, but we've passed it to the right places, and that is what we've got a responsibility to do. Our responsibility is not to deal with it and make it right. Our responsibility is to pass on the information, to know what we're looking for, know what information we need to take, and know where to pass that on to. So we can have a positive role, we can help to protect pupils, and I know as chair of the NJC that there are ADIs out there who have done that, and that there have been cases where they have helped pupils in these sorts of situations. They can protect themselves as well, because we haven't really talked much yet about how ADIs can protect themselves apart from the code of practice at the moment, and it can affect your professionalism, it can protect your own business if you know about safeguarding, because after all, if something happens to you, it doesn't take long for your reputation to just disappear overnight if somebody makes a claim against you, which might not be true. And we ourselves are quite vulnerable as ADI, sitting in a car with just one person with us. It brings into question whether, as time goes on now, we're going to have to consider more having in-car cameras that actually do film inside the car. And if we did, we would have to be saying and making people aware who get in our car why those cameras are there, and that they're for both of our protection. Because actually, if somebody does make a claim against us and it's just us and the other person, it could become really complex and difficult to be able to prove your innocence. We need to learn more about spotting and reporting. So we've talked a bit more about the spotting things. And obviously this isn't going to happen in every single lesson. It may not happen to some ADIs at all, but I'm sure it's happened to a lot of other ones. And reporting it. So should we move on to the next slide, James? So shall I go through this one in, and then we'll join in with things as we go along. So we've just been saying that you've got to keep yourself safe as a trainer. So it's been suggested that we sign the code of practice, which in itself, as long as we abide by it, will put you in a good position. You mustn't put yourself in a position where you could be accused of breaching safeguarding measures. So you would hope that this doesn't go on, but again, chair of a large national association, we know that it does, and we deal with cases, and we help the DVSA deal with cases sometimes. Bullying of pupils, harassing pupils, continually sending them things that they don't want. And Lynn, I think you mentioned earlier when you were talking to me about text messages and telephone calls. Do you want to say any more about that?
Yeah, I think as ADIs we've got to be very mindful nowadays that when we're sending messages, it's very easy to become, we do build a good rapport with our pupils, but we've still got to remember there should be this line between us and this pupil. We shouldn't be sending messages with perhaps kisses on the end. We shouldn't be sending messages that are inappropriate. So the messages we send to pupils should just be lesson times, reminders of lessons, changes of lessons. There's not really anything else we should be sending them. And hopefully if they're sending us messages, we shouldn't be responding to them, or we should be talking to them and saying, well, actually this is not appropriate. Definitely Facebook pages, Instagram, etc. We should try and make sure that we have business pages, and we only use those for pupils. We don't allow them to come onto our Facebook pages and on our private ones. So yeah, it's just being very mindful of what we're doing on social media. because pupils can see things, especially if they're seeing things. Perhaps you've been out for a night out and then you've got a lesson with them the next day. That could be mentioned. So definitely keeping perhaps business and social life or social media separate.
Yeah, definitely. And we do get good rapport with pupils, and I suppose in some ways what we're saying here is that we are their teachers, their coaches. We're there to help them. We're helping them get through a test and become safe drivers. So we're bound to build up a rapport. And in some ways, a friendship will develop, but you've got to be very careful of that word friendship, because we're not really there to be their friends. It's a professional thing that we're doing. So you've got to be careful not to overstep that line. And sadly, sometimes ADIs do without realising, and then it can actually have quite disastrous consequences and start to snowball out of control very quickly. And even things like high-fiving pupils or giving them a hug or putting your hand or your arm around their shoulder, things like that, just big no-nos. You know, you have got to be so careful now of the physical contact. So try not to put yourself in a position where anybody could ever say anything like that had happened. So we've said bullying and harassment, physical or sexual abuse or grooming of pupils, and sadly they are the cases that do get into the news and that we see, and we know that that goes on, but we also know that they are incredibly small numbers of ADIs where there is an effect of them doing something like that. And usually by people finding out and reporting things, it is dealt with by the DVSA through the fraud team, and then the police become involved, and we know that there are court cases, and we know that there are ADIs who are sent to jail. We know as well that there are examiners in the same situation. Sadly, there will always be a very small percentage of people that fall into that category. Got to be careful of using any sexually explicit language. Pupils, just think what you're saying before you, before you speak. Sometimes inappropriate filming of pupils. If there was any filming, they need to know what you're doing. They need to give consent. And basically, you've got to be asking yourself, what am I filming and why am I filming it? And entering into any inappropriate relationships with pupils. And we've talked about sexually inappropriate or abusive texts, emails or social media messages. So we just have to be really, really careful. Lynn, are there any other things you want to say on that?
No, I think we've covered it all there. I think everything's been covered. Yeah, it's the inappropriate filming. We're in a catch-22 situation. Do we film or don't we film? And I think it's a very argument we could have. Some people would say filming is covering our backs, and that we are going to be using it for the right reasons. But is that opening up a can of worms? So I don't know how I stand on that filming of pupils personally, but I can see why people do feel it's necessary.
And I think any filming, well, I don't think, I know that any filming, you must tell somebody what you're doing, and they must be aware that the camera is there and why you're doing it, and it's just to protect both of you. Yeah, definitely. Okay, James, can we have the next slide? Have we got any more questions at that point as well?
No, nobody else has asked a question yet.
Okay, so we've started to think as ADIs what we need to be able to do. Hopefully by now you've started to understand what safeguarding is. Your responsibilities really are to start to understand safeguarding, start to be aware of what it means, look out for signs, for warnings, so that you can protect people if you need to. And then I think it's our duty to know how to respond. and how to write down anything that we need to report it, to fill in a report form that would be suitable, and where to send it on to. Really, as ADIs, that's our responsibility. So we've just said know how to look for those indicators. Lynn's talked about warning signs, how to respond, be aware of how to act and where to send it on to, and how to accurately record it. So we're just finishing off with having a look at some of those things. Do we have the next slide, James?
Right, so what do we do if someone wants to report an issue? So when we say report, we're talking about where a pupil would like to speak to you, feels that they want to speak to you, build up a good rapport, and they start to talk to you about things. As we've kept coming back to, the whole of this webinar, is the main thing is that we listen. We don't give advice, we just listen. We stay calm. We don't. You might be given some really terrible news. They might say something that's going to really alarm you. You mustn't let them say that. You've just got to listen and stay calm. Be reassuring to them. Don't promise them anything, but be reassuring. Don't dismiss it. It's very important that their issues, maybe we may feel that that issue that they're talking to us about isn't that large or isn't particularly an issue, but to them it might be the end of the world. It might be an awful situation to them, so we mustn't dismiss it. Don't show revulsion. So someone might tell you, a pupil might tell you about something that's happened that you feel quite strongly about, quite annoyed about, that you mustn't show this. You mustn't show any revulsion. You mustn't show too much of any emotion. Just be calm. Don't certainly give a personal opinion, because we don't know all the facts. We are being told one side, but we don't know all the facts. It's not our job. Our job is just to listen. Don't suggest that you should be, that they should have told you before. They will tell you when they're ready. And just wait for them to tell you. Show that you care by listening and by being calm. No other way. Just show them that you care. Tell them that you'll help them, but you can't keep it a secret. Never promise that you will keep a secret. Keep anything that they're saying a secret, because you don't know if you can keep a secret. You might have to tell someone if it's a particularly alarming case. But tell them you can help them if they need that help and if they want that help, and we'll give them the advice. We'll point them in the right direction. Don't say it will be okay, because we can't say it's going to be okay. We don't know. We can only say that we can help them. Really important that we make a written statement of everything that's said. Tell them that you're going to do this. Explain to them, do you mind if I take notes? Do you mind if I just write this down? Because I might forget later. I don't want to put down the wrong things. So make sure that they're aware that you're taking down a statement and that you're agreeing with them, what you're saying, that that's what they've said. Really important that when we do write down a statement, there's quite an important thing that we need to write down. So again, we're going to put this on the website later, but we're going to make a little form up for you, so that if anything happens like this, you could perhaps print one of these off and keep it with you for if it ever happens. But we need to make sure that we write down their name and their age and their gender. If they have any disabilities that we know of, your name and your job title. What concerns they have, when it happened and where it happened, if they can tell you those details. The names of anybody that they feel were the perpetrators. So anything that they tell you someone's abused them, ask them if they'll tell you the name. What you saw or what you heard. So if they've told you a statement of what's happened, write down exactly what they've said. And try if you can to get a name and address of the person that they're accusing, because it's very important if you do have to pass it on. So what we'll do is hopefully James will be making a form about this later and we'll put it on the website. That's it. So Lynn, anything to add there?
Yeah, I think the final thing to add, and I think you've dealt with all those, the slide that we've still got there, you've dealt with that really well. We can't just say it'll be okay, because it may not be. And also, in some respects, that's a little bit dismissive. I think the most important thing is to just reassure, stay calm, and just, like you've said, be as helpful as you can, but not to give your own personal sort of opinions. So in the report, once you've written it, it's where does that report go to? Because if you feel you've got to the stage where you have got to something like this and it does need reporting, the place to report it to is your local authority. There is a gov.uk website actually as well that you can go on to. It's not the DVSA one. But there's one there that you can go on to which tells you or allows you to fill in a local authority, and actually will give you details of where you can go for safeguarding issues. It's also the website that sorry, I
was just gonna jump in there. The Gov UK website is Gov UK Report Child Abuse.
Right.
That's what its actual full title is. So
the NSPCC website is excellent, and actually you could probably learn a lot more about safeguarding from reading it. You can sign up for newsletters and get information there. They do also run courses, but there are lots of e-learning courses that you might want to do so that you learn to understand this more. The ones that we did were sort of about an hour and a half in. I think that was yours as well. And then you get a certificate to say that you've done that at the end as well. So the place to report to is really your local authority, and the NSPCC website has some really good contacts. A number that we will probably put, I think, again on the website, that is on the NSPCC website, which is one that you can use at any time if you want help from them, is 0808 800 5000. 0808 800 5000, because that's a really good, helpful sort of place to go if you want advice about what to do with anything anybody's told you or where to send your report on to. But basically it'll go to the local authority, it'll go to social services, they will look into it, they'll do background investigations, the police might get involved, and then hopefully the person will get the help that they actually need. But at that point we would be bowing out from it. It's not for us once that's been passed on, unless we were contacted again, which is highly unlikely. Anything else you want to say about where to report it to, Lynn?
No, you've covered all the bases there. Definitely the local authority, if you get in touch with them and ask them for the designated safeguarding officer, they will pass you in the right place, and they'll ask for the report.
If this is something about another ABI that you are reporting, then obviously you would do that through the DVSA and through the Council and Integrity team. And there is a website for them, there's email addresses, there's phone numbers. We can make a list of these, and we will make a list for you. But really you would deal with that through the DVSA as you start.
There are some more questions.
Any other quick questions?
Yeah, there are some more questions. As an ADI, I do not agree with ADIs who take photos of pupils when they pass. Panel's thoughts, please.
Well, I think at that moment in time, people are trying to be kind, and you know, they're using it as a publicity and an advertising thing. They put it on Twitter, they put it on social media. What you must be careful not to do is have any details showing, such as the examiner's details, or I wouldn't have the pupil's name or anything on there. If it's a person and a pass certificate, then I have mixed views. I personally have never done that, but I do know that a lot of people do it. But you mustn't have their personal details showing. Is that right, Lynn? Because there's an example. previous examiners?
It's something funny enough I do. I always say to them, would you like a photo done? As you say, you must cover everything up, really important, especially the driver number. So the only thing that you want showing is the very top of the pass certificate. I always offer them, I say, would you like to have a photo taken? If they say yes, I do. And then I say, would you like it put it onto my business page? And if they say yes, I put it on there. But what I do straight away is I will send them the photos, then I'll delete them off my phone straight away. So I have no record of them on my phone. I think that's important. But having said that, since I've done this safeguarding course, it has made me think, really, should I be doing this? So I don't think there's no reason we can't do it. But it has made me think about it, and I might not do that anymore.
So you see, between us as a panel, one of us is saying, no, I haven't done it. One of us is saying, yes, but we're thinking about it. So it's a good question.
Another question. In relation to the videos, how long would you need to keep the video, as an accusation could be placed weeks later, and in fact it could actually be placed even longer than weeks, couldn't it?
I don't know is the answer. I don't know how long you're allowed to keep.
Well, if we're starting to look at GDPR, we're starting to look at things with data that we store. And my understanding of it is we mustn't keep it for longer than is necessary. So I don't think there's a set time limit on keeping it. But I would have thought the amount of filming that you can keep that could become an issue, couldn't it? I mean, you couldn't have everybody's lesson recorded forever and ever.
You can get very long charge
time. So that is definitely an issue with that. Although we're saying, well, you could film in car, but that's a really good question. And actually, I don't have an answer to that. You can keep it, I think, for as long as you feel you need it. But quite how much of that data you'd have somewhere is another matter.
From what I understand about GDPR, you have to let them know that you are keeping it, the reason, and how long you'll be keeping it for. But it potentially could be a very long time to counteract any possible accusation, which could be a long time in the future.
But it's a really good question, and I'm sorry, I don't have right now. I don't have an answer to that, because I wouldn't like to say how long you are keeping all those people recording for.
If you're holding that sort of information, you have to be registered, don't you?
That's another can of worms. Not necessarily.
Yeah. Oh, right, okay. I don't know enough about that because I don't film in cars, so I don't know.
No, and I have to say at the moment I don't film in car either. So although it has been mooted as something that we might have to do to protect ourselves with more in the future, it's not something that I've been doing at the moment. Haven't felt the need to. But I'm sure there are ADIs out there who perhaps do have more vulnerable pupils that might, or who work a lot more hours than I work and may well feel that they want to. Anything else that we can help with, James? Sometimes with something like this, we open up more questions, which is good because it's making us think, and it'll make us go away and have a think about these things. Can't say that we can answer everything immediately tonight because it is a huge topic area, but we could talk to people that can come up with ideas for us. Is there anything else, James? It's good that we've had all these questions.
There aren't any more questions coming now.
Okay, so shall we let people know then that we will make a report form that will put these phone numbers, when we put this webinar up on the website, we'll include a slide that's got the numbers that they might want to use and contact, and the details of the NSPCC and the gov.uk one that's been mentioned, and the phone number that I mentioned, just so that they know that they're there. And if it were me, it's the sort of information I'd want inside my diary or in something in the car, so that if you need these things, you know where and where these contacts are. On the other hand, they are still around as the NJC. If you need to come to us, we can also give you these details. Just remains then to think through, James, what we will be doing next time. What date were we going to do our webinar? Okay, so I think we're going to do Tuesday. We're going back to a Tuesday, May the 22nd will be our next one. And we'll make a decision before the time. If we feel we have enough questions that we can still answer and we have more information about safeguarding, we'll do another one to complete more information on safeguarding. Otherwise, the other topic that we may welcome to look at is part 3, feedback, and work about audit. So I think there may be more news by then. So it will be one or other, and we will let you know before the time. If you have any more questions, then do just leave us with them so that we can help answer those. Is there anything else, Lynn, that you want to add?
No, that's. I think we've covered everything that we needed to cover.
Okay.
As I say, it's going to, as James said at the start of the programme, this could, it could open a can of worms. But I think the most important thing is that we don't open a can of worms. Is that we listen. We're there to listen,
Yes.
not to do anything, not to open a can of worms. So where one of the ADIs said earlier that we could be opening a can of worms. We don't want to be opening a can of worms. We're there just to listen and to pass information on should we ever have to. Hopefully nobody ever will, but it's just that on occasion that we may need to.
Yeah, it's knowing what to do in some sort of emergency situation that you may feel yourself being placed in. So hopefully that's helped tonight. It's helped explain it to you, what you might need to do, giving you some food for thought. Thank you for staying online and listening to us. Thanks to James for running it, and for Lynn to being here tonight as well. So for now, it's goodbye. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Is there a way of...
People know that they have to sign out of the webinar, James.
Yes, if they just close, I think if they just close their browsers, it will. They are slowly going.
Drink. Lynn, could you give James a list of those the number for SPCC and the gov.uk one mentioned, just so that we could add a slide at the end, maybe take the terrorism one out for now and just add a slide of useful numbers on there. And then if we can get a form made, that would be a useful resource. But I think we need to all have a bit of a look at that before we go and post it anywhere.
What I'll do is I'll write an email to James, send it to James with all the information on it, and then he can work on it. We've just had a text message from Nick.
Yeah.
And
So have I.
Thank you guys for the webinar. Thank you guys for the webinar. Feedback, good clear slides. Some of your voices broke up in the beginning but improved as it went on. My question, how many people did we have in this evening?
I've just texted back 35.
That's from Nick.
It's not bad, actually. That's not bad, considering we only put it out like a week ago. So
yeah,
and there's still
and it's a different evening.
There's still 9 people on the webinar who can probably hear at the moment, I think.
Yes, they will be able to.
So we'll just let everybody go. It's also who listens to it once it's on the website, because you get people listening then as well. Still got 9 on there.
So Lynn, I'm going to bring my computer to the I'll bring my computer. Are you taking your computer as well when we go to the show?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I'll bring mine, and I'll bring. I'll get the projector off James.
I presume that. I presume from the email earlier that we're both going to be in the same room, because it looked like they're going to be running workshops in different rooms.
I'm not sure. We probably need to have a look at that, Lynn, but hopefully. I mean, we haven't got more than one projector, but
I've just got rid of everybody.
Sorry?
I've just got rid of
has everybody gone?
Yeah. One or two of the questions were from, well, one or two of the questions were from Nick. One of them was from Andrew Love. I've had some other, well, a couple of other bits of feedback from Annabelle. Very useful. Thanks all. From Richard Golding. Thank you. Very interesting and thought-provoking. Nick, how much did it cost to do level 1? And Joe McGrory. Thanks, panelists. Very informative.
We're trying to add a few like extra little bits that they've not heard before, but I do have to be honest, when we're being asked things like, do large driving schools need a safeguarding policy? I would say somebody like Red and the big ones probably do.
The question wasn't policy, is it the question was safeguarding officer or expert?
Yeah, I
probably do actually.
I would say they do, and I think we do as well.
But surely all the teams...
With like, let's instruct and say, I don't know how many he's got now, but say 15. I mean, I think unless there was somebody that he put in charge of that, they would go to Matt for advice.
So really,
in a way, he is the safeguarding person.
So really,
I think,
every ADI and every either owner of a driving school or anyone in a position needs to know.
BSM to have them.
Sorry?
Definitely.
I think someone like BSM would need to have a safeguarding officer. Any of the large schools would need a safeguarding officer. I think that perhaps we should have one. I think the DIA should have one.
I think we should,
The other one should have one. Yeah.
But surely anyone in a management position in a driving school should be aware of safeguarding.
Yeah, I think every ADI needs to be aware of it, understand it, and do what we, understand what we've gone through tonight. But I think the NJC probably does need somebody that's in charge of safeguarding and knows even more about it. If you want to do the level 2, Lynn, feel free to do it, and we'll pay for you to do it.
I've still got a question.
Yeah, I'm quite happy to do that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't see why we couldn't pay for you to do that.
The other thing I was going to mention, we have to have a DRB every 4 years.
Yeah.
As instructors.
Yeah.
Examiners only ever have one.
Yeah, I think somebody else mentioned that too. Yeah, I think somebody else mentioned that to me as well. So, I didn't want to get into the. I've got all the freedom of information data now on how many ADIs were removed out of that 109 for sexual, I don't know, inappropriateness, if there is such a word, and also how many examiners have been removed, which was all quite interesting. So I have got
I know one.
I'll send it. Well, yeah, I'll send it through to you. I can send it through. I thought tonight we wouldn't go into that right now, but if you do want to do level 2 when you can, Lynn, then I think that's a good idea. That is a good idea. It's hard managing that without using examples that haven't really struck me before, but you're right, we can't do that, but I need to get my head around how to talk about it without making it personal.
It's coming back to that listening, isn't it? We don't want to give too much information out, whereas we're normally, as storytellers, we tend to use stories, don't we?
Yes, we do.
As examples. And I think with it, we can't.
No, and when that question came in about, so you don't say anything then if somebody's being abused, well, no, I'm afraid if somebody's actually being abused and you've worked that out, then you do need to do something.
Well, that was me asking that question because I'm still confused. Yes.
Thanks, James.
Well, from what you're saying, well, I've got a question. You said at different stages I do each of these. So when do I just listen? When do I tell them where to get more help? And when do I pass it on? Because there seems 3 different stages that you've said could happen, and I don't understand when I do each one of them.
Well, there's no right and wrong answer to
that. I'll find that out.
You have to, each case is very individual, isn't it? And as you listen, I suppose it starts to become obvious whether you feel they do need more help or not. Because it might become obvious that they're quite happy and that they've thought about it and thought, oh, okay, yes. But then they, you know, if they're really in a state, James, if they've been abused, sexually abused or something, they might be in a terrible state.
I mean, some of the things you're saying, there are different levels of.
Yeah, definitely.
So whatever you want to talk about, I mean, sort of, so some people get bullied and can cope with it. Some people probably get sexually abused and can cope with it. But it's so, I really, you seem tonight have said different things. That sometimes you just.
No question there. Everybody is different, so I can't give you a one-off answer as to when.
So how do I know when to listen and when I should pass it on?
You start with the listening, and when it becomes, what I can see where you're going up at here, when it becomes more serious and you then start to need to think, well, yes, I think I do need to do something with this, then you would do that. Or you would come to somebody like us and our safeguarding person, tell them, and if they say, actually, I think you need to pass this on now, that's what you do.
I think that if you've built a rapport, rapport with the pupil and you're continually listening, it's not going to be in one session that you're going to be just listening. I think it's going to be over various sessions. And I think then when you can get into the stage of saying, would you mind if I write this down? If you've got to that stage of saying, would you mind if I write this down? I'm going to pass this on, can I pass this on to someone? That's when you do. If they know that you're writing it down and they're aware of it, then they are then at a stage where they're willing for it to go further.
But from what you said earlier, there's going to be some occasions where you should pass it on that they might not be willing for that to happen.
Yeah, it's very hard, I think, James, because I think
that's what I can say.
I think it's going to be probably 1 in 1,000, 1 in 2,000 that's actually going to have to happen to. It's going to be such a rare occasion that actually happens. I mean, I've been doing the job 32 years. I've never had to do this.
No, we had that case in South Staffs where a lot of the female ADIs were being told by pupils that they'd left their instructor. I mean, I knew who he was and met him in the test centre all the time. And they were saying that all sorts of things were happening in lessons. And then the women started to talk together and realised this was similar. And then one of the ADIs mentioned it to the examiner at the test centre. And he said, well, strange you should say that. But 2 of the examiners have also reported the same person because pupils had broken down in the middle of tests and told the examiner. And that ended up in court, and he ended up with a suspended prison sentence, but certainly isn't an ADI anymore. So there are different routes, aren't there? I mean, the route there was ADIs talked amongst themselves, the examiners got involved, and then fraud and integrity, as it was, then got involved. So, you know, there's different routes for different things. I think possibly we could do a webinar on this, but we will have to see if any more questions come in. Definitely.
Yeah.
And if you want to do the level 2, do it, and then we could say that you're going to be, you know, you are our safeguarding officer, and if anybody needs help, yeah, we can come to you. But obviously we're all here as a backup as well. But if you want to do that, that might be a good thing to have somebody do.
I think as we've opened this can of worms, we should
Yes, exactly.
we should pursue it, and I think we should back up on the website with the form, with the information, and we should be able to say that we have got a safeguarding officer. Just because
if
we
the
need
form,
our basic.
yes, definitely. If the form is one that we've had off that course that we did, then it's a safe enough form to use. And there are example forms on the NSPCC website.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, I mean, I don't know whether we put ADI and JC at the top of it or whether we just make it a form.
Just make it a form.
Just make it a form, yeah. Okay, that's fine. Well, thank you very much.
That was good.
Got one, but yeah, I think so. I don't think we lost many people while it was on. A couple went at one point, but then people seem to come back again, so.
It stayed around 30-ish the whole time.
I just wanted to make a point at the beginning that I didn't say it, but the DIA keep kicking off about they're the only people doing courses and they brought safeguarding up. We've been doing it since 2011, for God's sake, and you know, the code of practice has been there for all of us, so it's not something that's totally new, and it's not new to the BDS and to DIA. So thank you very much.
Good. Okay.
Thanks a lot, Lynn.
Thank you.
And James.
See
Good night.
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
How do we turn all this stuff off?